opinions expressed by contributors are not necessarily those of the CUSJ. It's a legal blurb here. For the rest, you might agree with everything people say. No. Welcome and to the Let's Connect series of interactive meetings. We don't want to call it quite webinars yet, because webinars are quite impersonal and you don't see any of the participants, and it's not something that I particularly like. However, if we ever get really successful and we get hundreds of people showing up, then we might have to go to that mode. So today's meeting features Return to the Sacred Land by Rev Mwibutsa, Fulgence, as we know him, Ndagijimana, and welcome, Mwibutsa. Our next CUSJ meeting will be on Saturday, January 27th at 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 p.m. in DC. Liam Patterson-Morris, Vancouver Middle School's teacher, will then be speaking about champions, CUSJ education, sexual orientation, and gender identification. Do you have any suggestions for great subjects and our speakers? Please let us know at cusjmedia@gmail.com. And if you want to join our board is now co-hosting, letting people in from the waiting room, spotlighting and keeping track of time for question and answer and all that jazz. If you want to be part of our board, we can use some more members, younger members too. Younger means 50 plus. Or even very young people. Welcome, welcome. President at CUSJ.org will take care of that. And that is Jim, actually, if you didn't know. Here we have the land acknowledgement. We respectfully recognize and acknowledge the relationship that First Nations, Inuit, and Métis across Canada have with the land all Canadians live on and enjoy. This acknowledgement should only be a first step in eventually approaching restoring unceded land to the Indigenous nation or nations that previously had sovereignty over these lands. So here we have Reverend Fulgence, and now also known as Mwibutsa, Ndagijimana, he will speak about returning to the sacred land, to his land, Burundi. His homeland, Burundi, Unitarian minister Reverend Fulgence was imprisoned for his opinions and social actions. Many UU congregations and other groups in Canada, USA, and other countries all over the world took part in the Amnesty International's Right for Rights and succeeded to get him released. People then came together to have him come to Canada, first Saskatoon and now Ottawa, where he works and lives with his family for the last 8 years. And he might have been other places too, but please correct me if I have things quite somewhat wrong. Things have changed slightly in Maroon though. He was able to return very recently to be involved in social action projects and meet up with friends and activists of his church and other groups. To reflect the change, Fulgence is changing his name to Mwibutsa, and he will tell you more about that. So take it away, Mwibutsa.
Thanks, Helen. It's so good to be with all of you today and have a chance to connect with so many of you again after so many years. Many of the faces I can recognize them, and it's so good to connect again. My talk to you today is a reflection of my personal experience of being uprooted from home. It's a reflection on what it means to lose one's homeland, the experience of losing, but also finding love and care, and the challenges of building a new life in a new country, in a new context. It is also an experience of a risky return. Returning home was something very important to me, and I have been longing for it for a long time, many years. And but there's also a lingering question on the back of my mind. This is why I should want to attempt a return that could go sideways due to the situation that is not totally under control. And these are the points I will attempt to talk about as we go through our next 2 minutes. My name is Ndagijimana Fulgence, now transitioning to Mwibutsa. I will come back to that later. I come from Burundi. Burundi is a small landlocked country in East Africa. It is surrounded by the Democratic Republic of Congo on the western side, and Tanzania in the east, and Rwanda in the north. Burundi is a former German colony and a Belgian protectorate, and it got its independence in 1962. The small Burundian country has known violence since its attempt to gain independence. And our independence heroes killed, obviously, as many of independence heroes in many places, especially in Africa. And two major communities have been fighting for power ever since. In the situation I and 500,000 people fled from in 2015 is very much connected to that situation. The colonial heritage that we have been experiencing, in which Hutus and Tutsis were dressed against one another by successive colonial powers, and have not, unfortunately, to this day, been able to free themselves from that kind of trap. Some of you may remember that I came to Canada literally after escaping prison. I was released after a massive outcry of people around the world who pressured the government to release me. And those were mostly Unitarian Universalists from Canada, from US, and from many other places around the world. It was also the action of many other groups like Amnesty International and individual people who I was connected with, who wrote letters, signed petitions, called Burundian embassies abroad. And this eventually pushed the government to release me after realizing it was no longer in its interest to keep me. But the release did not mean prosecution of the people who had kidnapped me, or the people who had attacked our church with grenades and bullets. It was a way to probably save its face without the perpetrators having to pay any price. After my release, I crossed the border into Rwanda, and Rwanda was for sure safer compared to Burundi. And I can vividly remember how I felt when I crossed the border. I had worked for several years before with refugees who came back home to Burundi after some 10, others 20, others 30 years of exile. I have heard their stories, and I have heard the stories saying that many never made it back. So remembering those stories on the other side of the border, I looked back on the other side and I cried. The thought of me not being able to go back was simply unbearable. Both my parents were still alive. All my brothers and sisters were left behind. I had a church I was serving. And so many things were going through my mind. How will life be possible again without any possibility of seeing them and knowing I can be part of their lives and they can do the same? And this is true not just for me, it's true for many other people who have to make the difficult decision of leaving everything behind and going to a new place, building new relationships. Sometimes the price is very high. Canada welcomed me with open arms. Unitarian Universalists across Canada held me as I navigated the immigration process, the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship process with the UUA. They held me and supported me and my family when they joined me 6 months later. And that was part of a healing process that really started at that time. From Montreal, where I landed and stayed for 3 months, I got established in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, and stayed there for 5 years. For all that had happened, I knew and I had registered in myself that Canada is my home. Our son enjoyed friends. He liked the school. We had an amazing community all around us. But some occasional or not so occasional racist incidents and the loneliness we felt being in that new place sometimes reminded that after all, we are not home. We are not totally at home. Including when, I remember this vividly, when a neighbor called the city to complain about me parking on the other side, on the side of the road, and conveniently forgot to mention a car of a person who looked like the color. I mean the color of skin. And that energy that people who look like me or who are different use for those sorts of things also remind us that we are not home and waste of too much energy on those things instead of more productive endeavors. And then COVID hit and we stayed more at home, just our son, my partner, and it was a difficult time for everyone. I have to acknowledge that. But as a family, we start to notice or to realize how vulnerable we were to live in a city, mostly in a house, since we're not going anywhere, in which we have, yes, loving Unitarian Universalists around, but not a significant Burundian connection we can rely on in a, I would say, Burundian way. People who have the same stories as we do. People who can understand the stories we tell. And people whose stories we can understand. people who can understand our food traditions and other ways of relating to the world. We decided to move to Ottawa in August 2020. There is a significant Burundian population, and where we had friends and family we could connect to. In June of 2022, I got my Canadian citizenship. It was an important step in my exiled life. It was again Canada reminding me with a much louder voice that I am one of her sons. I could also now travel. On one of my trips to Rwanda, I decided to try something scary. That was 2022, to venture into Burundi for a test. I knew I was taking considerable risks, and I was aware I could be arrested and maybe even worse, killed. I did not share this news with anyone except my wife and our son, and a few people in Burundi who would help with the logistics. I don't want people to tell, no, don't go, it's too dangerous. And then if something happens, say, oh, we told you so. Why did you go back? So I just want to make my own decision and own it. So I flew in, applied for a visa as a Canadian citizen, and was allowed into the country. We need to realize that the situation was slightly different. The president under whose watch all the murders or killings happened had passed away. And the new president and his government were trying to change things. The number of people being kidnapped and had drastically reduced, and so was the people found dead on the streets. We call that an improvement, and a big one. So encouraged by that situation, I spent a few nights in Burundi and briefly visited my village. And as soon as I could, left. I was scared going in. I did not know what to expect. The country was, of course, even poorer than I left it due to international sanctions that were put on the country in 2015. But the people were still as resilient, as welcoming, as loving, and everything that I had rightly expected. I left with a strong desire to go back for almost a spiritual pilgrimage. Spend more time with visiting people, my family, my friends, worship with fellow Unitarians, and that's what I did last summer for 8 weeks. I have been involved in social justice projects for all those years, both in Burundi and in East Africa. It was good to see by myself how the work we do through Flaming Chalice International changes people's lives, brings even a drop of hope in that hopeless situation. This visit was joyful. It was good to see my brothers and my sisters. I was able to finally do all the rituals related to my parents' death and a memorial service. That was important to me. But beyond the fear and the risk, going back home after all those years and remembering the conditions through which I left, I felt very much alive. Fully alive while interacting with all the people I met. I could feel and appreciate what it means to be in community again. What it means to be with people who know me, understand me, who know my history, who can connect me to different realities. I was born and grew up in a very remote village and stayed there until age 13 when I went to a boarding school. I grazed cows and I know all the corners in the valleys and hills around my village. This was a time to visit those corners again and appreciate the land that saw me grow and nurtured me. So my visit made me realize how much I am, hopefully we are connected to our people, to our land, to our country. It felt like flesh was being put back to my bones again. The life was coming back. And the sense of belonging was being restored. As I said, I felt alive, connected, and felt I belonged. But the most striking confirmation of this aliveness, I think, was on a more deeper level. I could call it on a spiritual or a theological level, if you wish. I left my parents, I felt alive. I left them at home. And I went back home to an empty house. This was hard. But it also was, in a very strange way, an invitation to be my own person. I was now on my own as an individual, and I needed to take responsibility as an adult and not necessarily see myself as an orphan, because at 47 years old, we are a different kind of orphan. After 8 years here, I had begun to look at my life differently and wondering about my connections with the wider African traditions and Burundian traditions in my community. It was getting very much uneasy. Everything I turn around to remind me it's not mine. And going to this pilgrimage to drink from the source was almost an answer to that kind of longing. My visit confirmed that I was at another level of relationality to my inner self, the neighbors, and the Burundi traditions. And one of the places I went for that was my name. I was given a name by my parents, Ndagijimana, and Fulgence by a missionary who baptized me when I was weeks old, maybe 3 weeks. If I, my parents, and my neighbors can relate to Ndagijimana, few can, if any, can relate to Fulgence, apart from like a name that I have. It's a foreign name. No one knows the meaning of. In a culture which names are powerful, in the sense that they carry a message for the person who carries the name, for the community around, and for the person who gave the name. It dawned on me that colonization is still alive and well, and not in some mysterious ways, but in me, that I carry it. And it takes a lot from us. The first thing it does, it robs from us the capacity to drink from the familiar and the natural source and relate to our fellow human beings from a place of stability, a place of saying what is around me, what I have is enough. And that relational way of dealing with people we meet is usually expressed through a name. More things from our traditional view of ways of things is either illegal or looked down upon by Christianity, which in its failure to incorporate and embrace valuable cultural elements in its teachings, sees everything from our traditions as a threat to its often very shallow message. A message that very few people can connect to because it has no connection with their roots. In our tradition, a name is given by parents and always, with no exception, has a meaning of who the person is, what the circumstances of the birth are, the tensions in community. And so a name is almost like a book. You can read, you can interpret, you can ask questions to. But when you get the name from a foreigner, giving a name from his culture or her culture, you lose all of that. You also get, as you grow up, you also get another name because of how society sees you, your skills. Maybe you are a good hunter, so you get a name related to hunting. You are a very generous person, you get a name related to generosity. And as you grow up even more, you can give yourself a name as a life mission. Izina ry'ubuhizi, as we say in Kirundi. Looking at all those details, I decided this was the right time to give my name a new name, a mission name, but also to clarify my last name. So my chosen name is now Mwibutsa, Mwibutsa for short, the one who reminds people to do good and be kind. Many of our Burundian names have mana, like in Ndagijimana, and mana is God. And because now Christianity and Islam are the dominant religions, it is often heard that the mana we are talking about is the Muslim or the Christian God. I clarify the mana in my name, that it's the God of our ancestors. And then my name became Ndagijimana Burundi. This seemingly small thing has a large implication for me. First of all, people ask me, why do you have a new name? And then it gives me an opportunity to share it. But beyond that simple sharing, I think it gives me a place in the world and a mission that my life is called for. I've been thinking a lot about risks and how going back home in a still quite dangerous place was probably not wise. Happy to come because I can talk about that because I came back. I also remind myself that risk is a part of life. There is also all kinds of things we do to manage risks. We want to decide to go in a terrible situation just for fun, but there is sometimes a price worth paying. It's always difficult to leave people we love behind and everything we have worked for. Been there, done that. But I personally think we have to be careful that the need for safety does not suck out all our joy, all our life. or our connections that comes from taking reasonable risks when the circumstances allow. As a result of my pilgrimage, I think I have a renewed energy to do the work I am called to do. The work sometimes of just reminding people of who collectively we are called to be. Kind, good, generous. They have a greater and a clearer vision that they can call people to. Fulgence Chalice International is a Canadian registered charity through which I have been doing my community development work in East Africa, including Burundi, and the important work to support refugees through sponsorship that many of you have been involved in, or feeding them while we are still waiting. And all that, I think, my visit gave me even more energy and more determination to continue that work. It's a powerful tool to remind people anywhere that we can and we are invited to create generous and wonderful communities of belonging for everyone. So the picture we see here is me recently in August with some young people in my village. This is the community center. It's at the back, you don't see it. And it was just maybe when I left, they were kids. I did not know anyone before, but I was glad they were walking with their hands on the building site, and it was so good to be there. And this one is a Unitarian Church building in Bujumbura.
Yeah, very good. So that you conclude that basically you were imprisoned for being a Unitarian because Unitarians are basically social justice a lot. And so I think it's very interesting development in how you felt. Then we go to the ambulance that you worked so hard for.
Yeah, so in the last year or so, we have been working very hard to raise money to buy a car that would take people who are sick to a faraway hospital. We only have a very basic health center nearby. And so people who need to get to the hospital, which is like around 40 kilometers away, they would come and or go to their house and take them. This one, I was there when they took this baby. You can see the child looks very sick and not just malnourished. I think was born maybe with some issues. So the car was taking the baby and the mom to the hospital 40 kilometers away. And so we are glad to offer that service to the community.
Yeah, great. I think there's another picture here. It's a very happy picture of
yes, so on my right is a family dinner that I visited in Burundi, and they have a beautiful lunch, yummy lunch. On the left, these are refugees who are in Kigali, and some of them in a pipeline to come to Canada through a refugee sponsorship. And this one, if you can see my cursor, is one of the young men who is on the way to Winnipeg. Whenever and the daddy who is here is working hard to support them and get them to Canada.
Yeah, I think that's it for the pictures.
I will close by sharing that through all this journey, I really have been supported, encouraged, helped by Unitarian Universalists in Canada and in the US and around the world. Because this is a faith tradition that has a room that some other faith may not have or may not have wide enough, where a diversity of ways of being in the world are celebrated. It is a faith tradition that allows a person like me to be a Unitarian and to go draw from my roots and my cultural heritage. The Canadian Unitarians for Social Justice encourages all that work, and that make for possible for people to thrive and feel alive and establish connections that make all of us spiritually, physically, and socially alive. And I thank you for that work. Thank you, merci.
Thank you very much, Mwibutsa. We will now go into question and answer. But who is eager to ask a question? I see Joy has a question. Joy, go ahead.
All right. So it's an inquiry about your lovely stories. Mwibutsa, I have been witness at our dinner table with a couple of your beautiful stories of who you are, what you are all about, kindness, courage, good works, and so forth. And I'm wondering if you've built as much as a book of these stories, and have you ever thought to publish them?
Thanks, Joy. I've been thinking about it. We worked on a book with Liz James. Many of you know her from Saskatoon, but that's only short versions of this. Yeah, the reason an idea, and we still try to water it and until it grows into a book.
I can't wait. And I hope you have a lovely artist that will produce beautiful, engaging drawings of your stories for both the children and the child in our adultness, if I could put it that way. And thank you so much for that very passionate. I was sitting here with tears rolling down my eyes. I am a member of Amnesty International, and my Tri-City communities make a very big deal of the Right for Rights opportunity on Human Rights Day coming up on December 10th. And we are so glad to see the outcome of our efforts in you.
Yeah, if I may make just a brief comment about the work of Amnesty International. You know, sometimes the situations are so hopeless, and people think, maybe writing is meaningless. But no, it's not meaningless. It does work. Petitions, I saw the petition that Gary put up there. Petitions do work, and I encourage all of us to continue putting pressure on leaders and wherever they are at different levels, because voices of people do matter. And I am definitely a testimony of that.
Thank you. Okay. Over to you, Ellen. Is there anybody else?
Okay, I'm muted, sorry. Chris McBain has a question in the chat. You speak of being excited to return. How do you overcome the fears that may arise from past conflicts?
Excellent.
It is always, I think, a difficult balance to live through all our difficult histories or stories and find a way forward. And all of us, I believe many of our people who came here as refugees and who fled prison, torture, and everything, and how they can connect again with what they left behind, the trauma and all the memories, very difficult ones. And I think I am in the same category of those people. But as I mentioned, in terms of how, as an individual, but also as a collective, how do we get out of that? How do we contribute to peaceful cohabitation? How do we contribute to framing a different narrative? And Flaming Chalice recently, it was in 2021, 2022, as I was told that my mom died and I could not go there. And it was very difficult. And I just said, what, is there anything I could do to, in a way, to grieve in a positive way, to go through this situation in a useful way? And two people, one from Vancouver, another one from Kelowna, came up with an idea of saying, what would you do to make your mom proud? That will bring people together. That will be useful for the community. And we came up with a water project and a community center. And to me, these are they are up and running now. The 4 villages go to water school, and women who used to walk 4 kilometers, including my mom, now have water close to home. And those things encourage me to go back, despite the fear of difficult situations, because there is a life to be lived, and there are people to be beside as they go through all the challenges. So the fear remains. I wouldn't say I would go without any thing on the back of my mind. At the same time, I don't want that fear to be to paralyze me, to prevent me from doing anything or getting even close, especially the situation is slightly different. So I want to take advantage of any opportunity that allows me to do something positive, something good, or to even go back, and then I will continue as much as I can. And I think this visitor showed me it's possible. It may not always be possible. Like when we have all this situation where when there are elections, there is this tension. People are very, that's when violence usually happens, and we have that in 2 years, things like that. But at the same time, there may be opportunities when I can go. And doing what I do to bring people together from different ethnic groups, from different regions, especially those who were trapped by their religious faith. I told a story recently of a woman who is a Jehovah's Witness, who for many years could not go to any function, could not go to anything. But when the community center came and there were groups of women getting together, she accepted to come and she was welcomed, as a way to say, small gestures, small opportunities can create a new life and open up new possibilities. Yeah, that's what I can say about it.
Great, thank you. I have in the chat, I have something, she just left, by the way, but Reverend Jessica Del Purple is our minister, by the way, for Grand River Unitarian. And she says in the chat, thank you, beloved colleague, I'm so grateful to hear your story. You are a blessing to our movement. I have to sign off for another meeting now, but I'm very glad to be here. So I just want you to know that in case you missed it. And it was very nice. And are there any other questions? Joy?
Yes, I put it in the chat, but I guess I didn't send it. So it's about your children. And will you tell us how, I'm sure there are very resilient people growing up in Canada with their Burundi heritage. How have they blossomed in this? I presume they have. In our white colonialist country, how are they managing?
Thank you. We have one 15-year-old son, and he probably him better than us. He seems to be very, very adaptive, and I think when he came to Saskatoon, he got very good friends. He was part of the children's program there, and I think the landing was soft and encouraging, and that was very helpful. And I think he has been doing well. There are challenges. One of them being how to connect our children to our traditions, to our Burundian tradition, because he spent all his time in school, comes back in the evening, and then in the end, we do not have enough either time or willingness or see the need, for example, to speak our language properly, to value and understand some of the things. He was able to join me in Burundi this past summer. It was so important for him to know that he has a broader and bigger family, bigger than the few people he can connect with here. And he also was very frustrated because his French and his Kirundi is not as good as he should be, but also encouraged him to learn. And I think that was a very, in a way, a very transformative experience for him, coming back here after he was there for 3 weeks. And so we do our best to transmit what needs to be transmitted in terms of values, in terms of what our culture has the best to offer. But also we are aware that we are surrounded by different other demands of culture, or the capitalism, of all the buying things, or the Black Friday, everything that may not always be in the same line. And so I think it is a continuous work to make sure most or some of our best cherished things are transmitted to our children. Thank you for asking.
Thank you. Can you tell us his name?
Yes, so his name is Bwigenge. Bwigenge is, in Kirundi, it means autonomous or independent. That's the idea. And so when we got him, the tradition is that the dad gives the Kirundi name, the traditional, the tribal name, and the mom gives the Christian name. So I chose the independent and autonomous one. And Therese, my partner, did not want to choose a name. She was very weak when after she said, you know, can you please choose both? I did choose both, but I chose I wanted to have something meaningful. So his Kirundi is Bwigenge, And I wanted something not in Kirundi for his mom, but that could have a meaning. So his other name is Where. As a person you go to when you are thirsty, or as a something you go to get water. And a well is life-giving. So that's his name. So Well Gigenge.
Can you put the name in the chat so we can, and
Yeah.
how old is he?
15.
15, right. Wonderful. Great age to take it all on. And
Yeah. Mhm.
yes, yeah, thank you. Okay, now I see it. Uh-huh. That's lovely. Okay, Ellen, anybody else there?
Oh, I would like to ask if there is any more questions, and I see. Yeah, okay, that's good. Then I would like to finish the meeting with chalice extinguishing.
Can we get on?
Oh, you want to do the pictures first? Okay. Mwibutsa, can I share the pictures that you sent me and that we at the last moment I put them in? Yeah, okay. Let's oh, there's a question? Sorry?
Yeah,
Oh,
I'm
sorry.
probably,
Yeah.
I may be going over old territory. We've come in lately. How did he get connected to Unitarians and become a Unitarian in Burundi? I'm sure you've said that, but I missed it because it's not a normal connection, you might say.
You are right, it's not a normal connection. It's a long story, but I will make it short, saying that I discovered Unitarianism through internet. And when I was training to be a Roman Catholic priest. Actually, at that time, John from BC, was on the executive committee of the International Council of Unitarians and Universalists. And that's how I got connected to Unitarianism. And I was in a monastery, by the way, and then I left the monastery, and the rest is history.
Okay, great. Then John has a question.
Yes, thank you. I can remember attending a Canadian Unitarian Council meeting where you and Meg, I think it was Meg Roberts, were having a discussion between the two of you as to how each of you practiced Unitarianism and what it meant to you from your own cultural perspective. And the two stories, of course, were very different. And in fact, the way you two went at it, it was quite funny. And I can remember that quite distinctly. And you certainly had us entranced with your stories. I'm wondering how your understanding of Unitarianism, and not just your understanding, but your practice of it, may have been changed or altered in some way by your exposure to our Western brand of Unitarianism.
Yeah, thanks, John. That's a very good question. When I discovered Unitarianism, I was in Burundi with Burundians, and our task was to build something that could make sense to people who were there, who were mostly from Christian churches, were asking questions and were liberal, but they were really all of them what we could call liberal Christians, where they lived in God and maybe not in Jesus' divinity, but were very much anchored in their Christianity. And for some time, almost 15 years, I think we struggled with that, and the whole idea was, how do you build something new without throwing everything away, but also be free enough to chart new territories. And that, I think, is a very difficult balance to have. And I'm not even sure we have really, the Burundian ones have really succeeded there, because it is still a work in progress. For example, the Unitarian Church in Bujumbura, for a long time, was trying to attract people who do not know how to read and write, people who are not wearing shoes, people who are not as questioning of religion as we were. It was not easy to do, because contrary to the Roman Catholic Church, where a medical doctor could sit on the same bench with almost a street child, it was not possible, because we were not just repeating formula, we were trying to build something. In the Roman Catholic Church, is just, now it's time to repeat our faith. Everyone repeat the same formula. It's easier. So then it was, I think, tough in that way, and it's still work in progress, how to have this successful marriage, a beautiful one, between our culture, African culture, or Burundian culture in this case, and Unitarian Universalism ideas and ideas. When I came here, I was not visiting. I was here. I was in Saskatoon. I did a 1-year internship there. I stayed very much involved, and I think my practice changed a lot. Not just my practice, but also my understanding, or what I see as a sport where I can feel comfortable. I can because the possibility of saying, I'm not limited by this or this, to think about it, to plan, to see the bigger picture, is what allowed me to incorporate very much our traditional religion, the Burundian traditional religion, which believed in one God, but not a God, a tangible one you can touch, you can pray to, even ask for things, which allows people to take turns to celebrate. And today is a woman celebrating, tomorrow will be a young man celebrating, there will be a man celebrating, where the options are so varied and open that, in a way, it's no longer just a church, it's like a way of life, a way of relating to the world. And I think I got more to that point after coming here, because the struggle to lead a church on a daily basis, to build something, was almost off my shoulder. And then now I was trying to say, now in terms of practice, what makes sense? What can I incorporate? What can I push away? And I think that has become what I just shared with you, how our colonial history, in our naming, in our doing everything, has impacted, has followed us wherever we go, and how to be courageous enough to have something that works for us without fear of saying, I will be excommunicated. It was a Roman Catholic priest. Many things will not happen. So I think the practice and the understanding have changed when I got in close contact with Unitarian Universalism here in North America.
Thank you.
Ellen, I think there is a question from Tolvanen, or I think that I did not comment on.
Okay, in the chat?
Yeah, I think it says, what is your view on the debate among Unitarians, particularly in the US, that we are an extremely racist culture historically?
Okay. Do you want to answer that question?
I will just make a brief comment that
Okay.
this is a one of the difficult questions because there is no debate about the fact that settler colonialism societies like Canada and the US have practiced racist practices and dispossession of people from many things. And I don't know why I don't know why that would be just, it will be Unitarians only. I think it's just a fact of history that we are trying to work hard on to grow and move away from. And maybe Unitarians do the same work because, as I like to say, when we talk about racism, we may try hard in our communities, in our Unitarian church congregations, but we live in a society. We live in a country that in which not everyone is a Unitarian Universalist. And even if we do many things in our congregations, trainings and teachings and things like that, if our next door neighbor is not doing it, racism incidents will continue to happen. And so in a way, it has to take time long enough for society to get to a point where racism is unacceptable and things like that. But I wouldn't take Unitarians just as a group to call them racist in a society that has practiced all kinds of things, including slavery and all kinds of racism. And so Unitarians would be like anyone else trying to do the right thing at a particular point in time. That's all I can say.
Any others? I think we have exhausted our questions now. Thank you so much, and thank everybody also for coming and attending while other things were on the go elsewhere for the CUC. Really appreciate you being here. And can I ask Joy now to extinguish the chalice, please?
And thank you so much to our speaker who's eloquently apprised us of his amazing situation, and beautifully said and kindly said to us all. Let us imagine that we will be all kind as we go forward, more so knowing what I'm going to say Fulgence for an easier remembrance of your lovely name. Thank you so much. So as we extinguish our chalice, may its light of hope remain in our hearts to a light for others wherever they may be in our walk in life who cannot light their own. And so may it be. And I always call the smoke the spirit of life, sending it on its way.
Thank you very much. That was lovely, Joy.
Thank you.
And thank you so much, Mwibutsa, and for all your kind words and your story about what you went through, and for us, inspiration to definitely do something with Right for Rights. So Fulgence and Mwibutsa's website is flaminginternational.org, and I hope that is right, because I just added it to the list, and csfuu.org as well. And for the rest, we have of course CUSJ.org to explore. And questions and remarks you can send to csjmedia@gmail.com, And for the rest, we have a YouTube channel where all the previous meetings are posted. It's under @CSJ Media on youtube.com. And we also have a Facebook page that is not as active as we wish for, but it might come. Anyway, thank you so much, and please do work for justice and compassion, and stay safe and have a wonderful winter celebration.